Hello, guys, and welcome to the second part of what we covered today. So, first, I wanted to start with a little review, or just to see it again, because we kind of saw it at the end. We want to write the slope-intercept equation of a line parallel to the given line. And then it says graph both lines. So, first thing is our line looks like we have 7x plus 3y equals 3. Now this line is in standard form, okay? So this is standard form. And I know that it's in standard form because we have x and y on the same side. So what we want to do is we want to get that y by itself in slope intercept form, because what that will do is that will allow us to really easily read what the slope should be. And if I want to come up with a line parallel to this line, I need to know that slope first. So first thing I'm going to do, is to get that y by itself, we have to move over the 7x. Because right now we have a positive 7x on the left side, and we want to get rid of it because we want that y by itself, because that is what slope-intercept form is. It's y equals mx plus b. So my first step is, if we have a positive 7x, I'm going to do the opposite of this entire term to get rid of it on the y side. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other side. Okay, so you will always do this step first. Whatever your x is, if your 7x was a negative, then you would add 7x to each side. But we had a positive, so we're subtracting it. So now I'm left with 3y on the left side. That's what's left. And then I'm going to put that 7x term first. And because you can't combine them, you just kind of put them next to each other. So negative 7x, and then that's a positive 3. Okay? And again, because we couldn't combine them, you just kind of write them right next to each other. If that 3 was a negative, then it would be minus 3. Now, we're going to do the final step to get that y by itself. We're going to cancel out multiplied by that 3. So we're going to divide by 3. And I have to divide everything by 3. So I'm left with y equals negative 7/3. We just leave it as a fraction. X plus 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I can see that my equation is, and I'm going to write negative 7/3 x plus 1. Y equals negative 7/3 x plus 1. So that equation is this original line. And if I were to graph that line, I would go to 1 on my y-axis because that's my y-intercept. Go to 1. And then my slope tells me negative 7/3 means I go down 7, right 3. Because remember, the top one is the up or down, and then the bottom is always to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then there's a dot. So my line is like this. So now I want to take this line and come up with a line parallel to it. Okay, and according to this information, we want it to contain the point negative 3, 7. So that means I'm going to use point slope formula. Okay, and remember, point slope formula tells us, this is the formula every single time. So you will always tackle problems the same way. So that is point slope. And remember, we did that a few weeks ago. Doesn't make it any easier, but it's okay. So that's point slope. So we take what we want the slope to be and our new point, and we plug it in there and just kind of simplify it till you get that y-intercept or the slope-intercept form. So for our point slope, for our formula, our original line has a slope of -7/3. So that means that I want the slope of my new line, if it's going to be parallel, I also want it to go through -7/3. The x and the y are just part of the formula. Those are your variables. Now, I've plugged in the slope. The slope always goes in that m spot right before the parentheses. Now I'm going to take the point -3, 7 that they want this new equation to go through, and I am going to plug it into my formula. Since the -3 is my x value, that goes next to my x. Oh, and minus a minus turns into a plus. And then y is my 7, so that goes in next to the y. So this is my formula. Technically, I'm done, but they want to see it in slope-intercept form. So what I would do to this point slope formula, now that I've got it written in there, is my first step is going to be to distribute or multiply the number right in front of the parentheses throughout the parentheses. And these steps remain the same every time. So the first step to change a point slope to slope intercept is always to take the number in front of the parentheses and multiply it by each number in the parentheses. So -7/3 times x is -7/3 x. -7/3 times 3, I could do that in Desmos, honestly, or I'll just show it over here. -7/3 times 3 is the same as 3/1. -7 times 3 is -21. And 3 times 1 is 3. So -21 divided by 3 is -7. And then my final step to get that y by itself so I can graph it super easily is I am going to add 7 to both sides. So we are left with y equals -7/3 x. Oh, and -7 plus 7 is just 0. So I don't have to put anything on there. And why did I add 7? It's because I originally had y minus 7. So that means I'm going to put a dot at the origin, and I'm going to move according to the slope. I'm going to go down 7, right 3. Ooh, it looks like our lines are super close. Oops, I didn't draw the line very well. There we go. All right, let's talk perpendicular. Perpendicular. It's a fun word to say. So, okay. So these two lines are an example of perpendicular lines. Okay, if I graphed them, I would say, okay, for the first one, my y-intercept is -4. So I'm going to put a dot at -4. My slope is 1/4. So that means I'm going to go up 1, right 4. And draw my line. Then my next one here, my y-intercept is 2. Okay, so I'm going to go to +2. And my slope is -4. So that means I'm going to go down 4, right 1. And we can see that these lines are indeed perpendicular. They intersect each other at what looks like And we can say it is because we know they're perpendicular. It's actually those slopes that tell us. Look at the slopes between the two lines. The slope of my first line was 1/4. The slope of my second line was -4. This is where we introduce the term. You're going to love this term. I love this word. Of the opposite reciprocal. Okay? Opposite means the sign. Opposite refers to the sign. See how this first slope is positive? That means this one negative. And then reciprocal refers to the actual number. So 1/4 was my number. If I flipped it, I would actually have 4/1. So when you have lines that are perpendicular, their slopes are opposite reciprocals. You have to have both. You can't just have a reciprocal. Okay, so sometimes people get confused. They'll see 1/4 and 4/1, and they'll say, oh, perpendicular. No, not perpendicular, because that 4/1 is still positive. That would be neither. It's not anything if it is that. Okay, so what are perpendicular lines? They are slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals. Okay, so if the slope of this first one, it's right in front of x, is 1/2, the slope of a of a perpendicular line would be 2/1, or just 2, and then I have to make it negative. So opposite reciprocals, flip it, and then do the opposite sign. If this slope for b is -6/5, I'm going to flip the numbers, so 5/6, and then this was negative, so now it turns positive. And this slope is 1, technically 1/1, right? So if I flipped that, I'm still going to get 1/1. It's just one of those unique numbers, but then I make it negative. And remember, if you get a over 1 type number, Math Excel is kind of weird, so they don't want that over 1. They just want the number. Okay. So we have to determine, are these lines perpendicular? I can do that. I don't have to do too much there because I have slope-intercept form. So I can real easily read the slope right in front of x. It's just 4/3. And this one is point slope. I can just read the slope again. It's right in front of the parentheses. And then I'm going to say, at first, I might be tempted to say, oh yeah, reciprocals, but they're not opposites. So we would say, no, not opposites. One would have to be positive and one would have to be negative, so no. Now, unfortunately with B, I can't really check that. I have to first rewrite it into slope-intercept form. It's a lot harder to rewrite it into point slope. So if you have it in standard form, just put it in slope-intercept form. So that means I'm going to do some switcherooing here. I got to get that y by itself. So I'm going to first move this 12x over to the other side, and it is a positive, so I'm going to do the opposite. And guys, remember, these steps remain the same. They don't change. Okay, so -3y equals, and then the -12x is going to go in front, and the +9 stays in the back. And we just keep whatever sign's right in front of it. That's what we did. Final step is I'm going to divide by the number right in front of y, my coefficient. So we are left with 4x plus -3, or -3, same thing. So this slope I can very clearly see is 4. Okay. Now let's do it again for the other one, because you can see we were mean again and we did not give it to you in slope-intercept form. So remember, first step is the same. I move that 2x over the other side. It's a positive 2x. So I subtract 2x. So that leaves me with 8y equals, and I just put them right in front of each other, negative 2x plus 24. Final step is I divide by that number in front of y. So we're left with y equals negative 2x over 8, or negative 2x plus 24 divided by 8 is 3. Now, originally you might be like, no, this is negative 2/8 for your slope. But it actually reduces to negative 1/4. So look, we have 4 for our first one. And once we reduce the second slope, we do get negative 1/4. So this one, yes, they so are perpendicular because they are opposite reciprocals of one another. Remember, you need both. Okay. Last thing you'll have to do is, again, write the slope-intercept equation of a line perpendicular to a line, okay? So this one's real similar. We kind of just, I don't think we did this part. No, we did the parallel version. Okay, so this is my line, and I want to come up with a line perpendicular to that, and it holds on that point. So the original slope of my line is negative 4. So if I flip it and then make it the opposite sign, I would get 1/4. So now I'm going to take this and this, and I'm going to use my old friend point slope. So my slope is 1/4. And my point, -7, is my y value. Remember, y is always second. So that goes in there. Oh, negative, negative, turn it positive. And then the same thing with my x. The -3 is my x value, so it goes in here. But we got to turn it positive. Now we're going to do that distributive property. We're going to multiply that 1/4 across. So we're left with y plus 7 equals 1/4 x plus 1/4 times 3. It's the same as 3 times 1, and then 4 times 1, so 3/4. And then we're going to subtract that 7 from both sides to get y by itself. And here's where we might be like, ugh, oops, I wrote that wrong. 1/4 x. So 3/4 minus 7. Remember, you do need common denominators in order to subtract. Here's where I might be like, just use Desmos to help with this part. So I would go to Desmos, and then you can go 3/4 minus 7. Oh, and you get a fraction, but that's okay. We're just going to convert it. Or you get a decimal, excuse me. But we would just click the number to convert it. So you get -25/4. Now, if we were going to graph that one, there we go. Then we would probably make it like a mixed number because it's just really, it's tricky to graph that. So -25/4, or I think that is -6 1/4. I think, yeah. So yeah, so that is what we would do. So the equation of the line perpendicular to that original line is right here. That's it. That's all I have, friends. I believe there are more lines here, but yeah, no need. Keep watching it. Do the Ask My Instructor if it doesn't make sense, and let me know. Thanks, guys.